So I just found another copsucker video, and a pretty cringy one at that. You ever see those commercials from nonprofits or charity organizations where they'll have the little kids or the puppy dogs with big round eyes, and they'll play the sad, sappy music in the background, and they'll say some shit like, your donation could end cancer or world hunger or some shit. You know what I'm talking about, those super sad, cheesy charity commercials? Well, that seems to be the exact direction this video goes. On top of that, the video was made by a cop, so there's also an element of self-congratulatory arrogance to it. Anyways, let's get right into it.
Dear Officer, we are the majority who have been silent too long.
And right out of the gate, we're already going for a bandwagon fallacy, and a pretty dubious one at that. Let's put the issue of this being a bandwagon fallacy to the side for a moment. Does Mike have any data to prove that cop supporters outnumber cop haters? Because to me it seems like the opposite. Everywhere I look, there seems to be more and more criticism against police, while police support is largely relegated to either far-right conservatives or cops themselves. I mean, just look at any social media site. Cop Lock and Cop Watch related pages get millions of views, while Thin Blue Line and Back the Blue pages barely get 1,000. So even if this point wasn't based on a fallacy, it would still be dubious.
And we're here to tell you that we need you.
We need you!
So let's take a moment to discuss the entire premise that this video is predicated upon. Dear police officer, we need you. And this of course raises the question, what for exactly? What exactly is it that cops do for us that makes them so dang important? The obvious answer that someone might give is that they protect us from criminals. Well, do they though? Let's think about it for a minute. Imagine this scenario. There's a burglar in your house. He's there to do something nefarious, whether it be steal something, kill somebody, rape somebody. He's there to do something bad. So naturally in that situation, you'd pick up the phone, dial 911, and tell the dispatcher that you need the police, right? So what happens next? Do the police magically teleport to your home in time to stop the bad guy from doing whatever he was planning to do? Obviously not. It's going to take them time to get there, of course. How much time exactly? Well, it depends. These wait times can be 10 to 15 minutes on a good day. Police response times of 30, 45 minutes, or even an hour aren't unheard of. In some cities, you might not get an officer to your house until the next day. And of course, this leaves plenty of time for a burglar to do whatever damage they want to do and flee the scene. The reality of it is that unless you live like right near the police station, it's very unlikely that the police will show up in time to actually be of any help. Now, you could conceivably make the counter argument that sure, maybe the police won't show up in time to directly protect me from the criminal. However, they will show up, investigate the crime, and catch the person after the fact. And so by investigating and catching criminals after the fact, they will not only incapacitate that criminal from reoffending, but the consequences will also create a deterrent effect for any other would-be criminals who would also commit the same crime. Thus, cops indirectly protect us from criminals by reducing the statistical likelihood that a crime will occur through incapacitation and deterrence. This, admittedly, would be a much more plausible case to argue, but it would still be a difficult one to make given the facts. The reality is that government police do a really shitty job of solving crimes and catching criminals. In a lot of major cities, the clearance rate, that is the percentage of cases where a suspect is successfully apprehended and convicted, is abysmally low for most serious crimes like rape and murder. In Chicago, for example, the clearance rate for murder is only 20%. What that basically means is that if you kill someone in Chicago, you have an 80% chance of getting away with it. No wonder gangs basically control most major cities in America. This is, of course, if the victim is one of us mere plebeians. If the victim is one of their fellow gang members in blue, then they'll spare no expense capturing the person responsible. So if cops don't protect us from criminals directly, and if they're pretty shitty at protecting us from criminals indirectly through incapacitation and deterrence, what exactly are they good for? Well, they're basically government enforcers. Their primary job at the end of the day, what they're literally paid to do, is enforce the edicts of government. Protecting you is at best a secondary consideration. This is why you always see them parked along the median waiting for an excuse to pull someone over and give them a ticket, or why you see them raiding people's houses for completely harmless actions such as growing a plant, because they serve government, not you.
The majority of citizens in your community know they would break under the mental and emotional stress that you have to process every day.
What mental and emotional stress? Are you going to back up the arguments that you make with an actual explanation? Or are we supposed to just take what you say for granted based on sympathy alone? Because to me it doesn't seem like cops really go through all that much stress. I don't see a whole lot of cops out there being heroic and brave like you see on TV. They're usually, like I said before, parked on the median, fishing for excuses to harass and find people. Sit in an air-conditioned car all day, point a radar, eat donuts, maybe fill out a little bit of paperwork here and there. Fuck, I can do that job.
But we are grateful that you're willing to bear it.
I like how Mike feels the need to put all of his arguments into other people's mouths. Like he feels like he has to gaslight his audience into agreeing with him because he feels like he can't make a good enough case for his point on his own. Like, speak for yourself, Mike. I would personally be happy if more cops decide they couldn't take it anymore and decide to quit.
You run from call to call, shift to shift, day after day dealing with some of the worst things this world can throw at you.
Based on what I observed in that video, I think that cop deserved to be shot. Like, he just threatened someone with a taser. I mean, I don't know, maybe something happened off screen that could have justified the officer threatening that guy with a taser. But yeah, if you threaten someone with a potentially deadly weapon, they have the right to fight back in self-defense. You know, there's this whole sense of entitlement that a lot of cops have, where they seem to think they should be able to just go around threaten people with violence and not expect their victims to fight back.
When you wonder, on many of those days, whether the job is worth it, or if this life is worth it.
That's kind of a good thing, actually. Maybe cops should wonder if what they're doing is really worth it. Whenever a cop decides to ruin a teenager's life because they had a harmless plant, or decides to extort money from a working class motorist because they were driving above some arbitrary speed that some politician decided was too fast, maybe they really should take a minute to think, is what I'm doing really contributing to the betterment of our world?
Please remember, we need you.
That cop on screen isn't crying because he feels guilt about killing someone. He's crying over the consequences he has to face. You know it, I know it.
The salary you earn will never be enough to compensate you for the dangers you face.
Oh, but baby.
Every penny of your so-called salary is forcibly stolen from the rest of us who actually contribute to the market economy. Like, oh, you feel you're not being paid enough stolen loot for harassing people over victimless crimes. Oh, boo-hoo, cry me a river.
The scorn you endure from the public, and the harassment and ridicule you're forced to tolerate.
So if you've been hurt and it hurts real bad, or if you have feelings that are making you sad, then it's okay. It's okay to cry.
Hey Mike, do you think that people just randomly hate cops for no reason? Do you think people just wake up in the morning and just have this sudden unexplainable urge to just hate cops? Or do you think that the scorn, harassment, and ridicule that cops have to face might possibly exist for a reason? Like, for example, all the use of excessive force in enforcing victimless crimes. You think that might be part of it, Mike?
The benefits that will be paid to your family should, God forbid, you must lay down your life in the performance of your duties.
When has a cop ever laid down their life to protect someone else? In fact, usually what we see is the opposite. Cops kill people at the drop of a hat over the slightest little provocation because they fear for their own safety. They prioritize their own lives above yours, not the other way around.
Will be minuscule compared to the value of your life.
You know, I love this whole holier-than-thou attitude that cops have, where they think that they're so special just because they wear a badge and uniform. Like, oh, your life is so valuable. Apparently more valuable than the rest of ours. That's why assaulting a police officer is a higher charge with higher penalties than if some of us were to attack us mere plebeians. Cops totally believe that their life is more valuable than yours. That's why they're constantly killing people because they, quote, feared for their safety.
And the contribution you make to your community.
What contribution? What exactly is it that cops do for us besides enforce victimless crimes, write tickets, and beat the shit out of people? Hey Mike, if you want us to believe that cops are God's gift to this earth, you can't just expect us to take your word for it. You need to provide an explanation of what exactly it is that they do that's so important.
We hate that we expect you to make that sacrifice if necessary.
So Mike wants you to believe that any time a police officer is killed in the line of duty, it's automatically a bad thing. And, well, this is an idea that more or less gets conditioned into people's minds by the whole police state. Like, cops are just doing their job. They're just enforcing the law. And if you don't like the law, then don't fight back. Take it up with the system. Blah, 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 all that drivel. Larkin Rose has a video called When Should You Shoot a Cop? I'll link it in the description. It's actually a pretty good video. I encourage everyone to go and watch it. Because Larkin Rose breaks down a lot of assumptions people make about forcibly resisting the police. Is it never okay to shoot or fight back against a law enforcement officer? What about the SS or the Gestapo? Hey, you know, when they were loading all those Jewish people into the boxcars, they were just doing their job. They were just enforcing the law. Don't shoot the Gestapo. Instead, just petition Adolf Hitler to stop gassing all the Jewish people. You know, our country was founded by cop killers, right? The Redcoats were law enforcement. The British Crown was sending them over here because the colonists were refusing to obey the king. Our country was literally founded by people shooting at law enforcement officers. So yeah, I'm not saying it's always justified to kill a cop, but sometimes it is. Thinking it's never okay under any circumstances to shoot a cop is a recipe for tyranny, because you're basically saying, oh well, the government can just do whatever it wants to me and I'm not going to fight back.
But still, We need you.
I just want to say that that video is actually pretty based. The guy not only fought back against the road pirates who were trying to extort him, but also drove the fuck away. Like, kudos on that guy for sticking it to the pigs.
The police need more training.
I don't disagree that the police need more training, but what kind of training exactly are you talking about here? Because to me, the kind of training that police officers need more of is training in communication, de-escalation, and problem-solving skills, where the type of training that police want is how to use bigger military toys.
Defund the police.
I actually felt a lot of catharsis from that clip of the pig getting run over. I cannot tell you the sense of dread I feel in the pit of my stomach every time I pull up to an intersection where a pig is directing traffic, because they'll stand there and flail their arms around, and then get pissed off at you if you don't understand what they're trying to tell you to do right away, and there's usually a second pig somewhere waiting nearby to bust somebody for a traffic violation.
Are the contradictory cries we hear from, let's face it, fringe elements of our society.
Again, with the gaslighting, he seems to be trying to poison the well by implying that all the people who criticize the police are just some fringe minority of whack jobs, which again, from what I can tell, isn't even true.
Whose end objective is to discredit and systematically dismantle the one institution that has the ability to maintain order.
Is government police the only possible institution that can maintain order? This is a variation on the whole roads argument that every libertarian has heard a million times. The idea is that if government doesn't do something, then it just doesn't get done any other way. So if all cops were to just disappear tomorrow, do you think that people wouldn't figure out a way to deal with crime? Because as it turns out, there are alternatives to government policing, such as private security firms or neighborhood watch organizations.
And to seek justice for those whose rights have been violated.
But what if your rights were violated by the bastards in blue? Then what? You ever see a video of a cop arresting another cop? Usually not. Usually what you see is in a video where a cop is doing something they're not supposed to be, the other cop's best case scenario just stand there and do nothing. Or they might even join in the beating or the shooting or whatever.
You would love to have more training, better training, more frequent training, but your department tells you that there is neither time nor money to provide it.
Oh no, the money is definitely there. Police departments make up a majority of a city's operating budget in pretty much every city in the country. Police departments get plenty of money for training. The problem is they'd rather spend it on their military toys.
You do the best you can do to do what is expected of you in a professional manner.
So I'm not going to sit here and say that there aren't any cops out there who try and be professional. I'm sure there are plenty of them that do. But a lot of cops act like dicks. They yell at people, they speak to people in this condescending tone, which I guess is somewhat to be expected given the nature of the job, which is literally to boss people around and control them.
And despite the fact that we have failed you, we need you.
How exactly have cops been failed? They get guaranteed salaries. They get pensions and benefits most other people would die for. They get all kinds of little perks like take-home vehicles and fuel on the taxpayer dime. They get the benefit of the doubt in almost every dispute. Aside from politician or corporate executive, I can't think of another profession that gets pampered more.
We have seen far too many instances in which the proverbial crap has hit the fan, and instead of doing their due diligence...
These protests seem to be in regards to the shooting of Keith Lamont Scott in Charlotte, North Carolina, which I totally agree was unjustified. I mean, Keith was just sitting in his car not bothering anybody, and some police officers who were there for a totally different reason, by the way. They were there to serve a search warrant, which didn't even involve Keith. They decided to harass him because he happened to have some marijuana and a gun on him.
...to conduct a complete and fair investigation before rendering judgment.
So Mike here seems to take issue with people protesting police brutality. But why? Isn't this a free country with free speech? Don't the people have the right to peacefully assemble and voice their grievances, especially against the government? I mean, Mike, isn't one of your responsibilities as a police officer to uphold our constitutional rights? Because I support free speech, even to say things that I disagree with or criticize things that I say.
Your department has not only thrown you under the bus, they have driven it back and forth over you while onlookers have cheered.
Bullshit alert. Bullshit alert.
Mike seems to be trying to make it out as if there's this rampant problem of police officers facing undue disciplinary action from their departments, but usually it's the opposite. Usually when a police officer is accused of something, the department immediately tries covering for them. The only time police officers ever really get thrown under the bus by their department is if they try to do the right thing and hold other officers responsible for their misconduct. A staggeringly high number of cops have been fired for simply pointing out bad things other cops in their department have done.
Even then, the critics are not satisfied.
The critics aren't satisfied because shit needs to change, Mike. Cops need to start holding each other responsible for their misconduct and stop enforcing victimless crimes.
You deserve better.
So, Mike, let me run an idea past you real quick. If you think that cops deserve to be treated better, which, I don't know, maybe there's a case for, then I say let's abolish government police and switch to private security. That way, instead of the good cops and bad cops being lumped together, the good cops will get treated what they're worth by the market, and the bad cops will lose money and go out of business. Just a thought.
You deserve due process whenever there are allegations that you have violated policy or committed a crime.
Okay, I don't necessarily disagree with that one. Cops do deserve the same due process rights when accused of a crime as do the rest of us. I don't believe that's an unreasonable expectation. However, that being said, cops get more than due process when there are allegations that they've committed a crime. They actually get special protections from liability that the rest of us don't. For example, qualified immunity.
But even though it seems like you lack the support of your department leaders, who seem to have forgotten what it's like to be a cop on the street.
Department leaders are usually the first ones who come to bat for cops who misbehave. I mean, just look at what happened in Uvalde, Texas. 6 officers stood by and did nothing while children were being murdered, and the chief of their department was trying to justify it.
We are willing to give you the benefit of the doubt because we need you.
Hey Mike, can you once again stop putting words into everyone's mouth? It's getting kind of old at this point. I don't think cops should be given the benefit of the doubt. Quite the opposite, actually. People who are in positions of power and authority should face more scrutiny, not less. You want to be in a position of authority, you get the responsibility that comes with it.
Yes, you've stopped us for a traffic violation.
Most of these so-called traffic violations shouldn't even be on the books to begin with. For example, speed limits are actually a relic from World War I. They were implemented as a form of gas rationing. The government wanted people to drive slower so there'd be more fuel to send overseas for the war. Well, as it turns out, police departments and local governments really liked the extra bit of revenue they got from all these fines. So once the war was over, they basically used safety as a justification to keep these speed limits around. And thus they're still used as an excuse to nickel and dime working class motorists to this day. The truth is there's no actual data to show that speed limits make the roads any safer. In fact, they usually do the opposite, because now instead of paying attention to the road, drivers are now paying attention to their speedometer and the rearview mirrors to make sure a cop isn't watching them. Not to mention cops flashing those massively distracting red and blue lights to pull people over, which end up distracting other motorists on the road.
And if you gave us a ticket, we probably deserved it.
No.
I'm going to have to hard disagree with you on that one, Mike. Most traffic citations are bullshit, and a big reason for that is cops basically know they can get away with writing bullshit citations, because actually challenging a citation in court is a huge pain in the ass. First of all, traffic court is never open on the weekends, which means if you want to challenge the citation, it usually means leaving work, which means either losing wages or eating up vacation time. Then you usually have to pay some type of administrative fee to the court, or in some instances even hire a lawyer. By the time you go through all that hassle and expense, filing the ticket just isn't worth it. Oh, and there's no penalties for cops writing bullshit tickets, by the way. If you can go to court and successfully prove that the cop wrote a bullshit ticket, there's no penalty for the cop whatsoever. So of course cops are going to write bullshit tickets, there's no disincentive.
But many times you've used your discretion and shown some grace because after all, you were human as well.
Oh, eat shit, you stupid Nazi. Yeah, you're not doing someone a favor by not extorting them for a victimless crime. And if you really were human like the rest of us, then you wouldn't go around harassing people and trying to detain them. If you want to be treated like a human being just like the rest of us, then fucking act like it.
You have found our lost dog. You have taken time to drive down our street to take part in a birthday parade. You have shown compassion when our loved ones have passed away.
Okay, yeah, sure, sometimes cops do good things. I don't think anyone is arguing otherwise. What we are arguing is that the fact that cops do sometimes do good things doesn't mean that cops shouldn't be held responsible when they do bad things, nor does it take away from the issues of policing as an institution. I've said this before in previous videos. I don't believe that every single police officer is personally a bad person. I'm sure a lot of them do join the force with good intentions. But because the institution of policing is set up primarily to serve the government and not the people, the interests that police will tend to serve will inevitably end up working against you, regardless of the benevolent intentions of any specific officer.
You've laughed with us?
I've never had cops laugh with me, but I've definitely had cops laugh at me. One time I was arrested at a furry convention. It's a bit of a long story I'll be saving for a different video, but I basically asked the officers if I could change out of my fursuit before being transported to the police station. They of course said no. Giving me an extra minute to make sure I could be comfortable with the whole situation was just asking too much. And of course when I get down there, all the cops in the police station start laughing at me because I'm in my fursuit, just being massive condescending pricks to me the entire time. And I wouldn't expect anything different from the bastards in blue.
You cried with us.
The only time I've ever seen a cop cry was when they were scared of the consequences they would face for doing something wrong. It had nothing to do with compassion or empathy or anything like that.
Because like us, you're human.
Hey cops, you guys can either be these godlike deities who are infallible and the rest of us are forced to obey, or you can be normal people like the rest of us. You can't be both. You can't just have your cake and eat it too. You can't just be above the rest of us when it comes to powers and authority, and be on the same level as the rest of us when it comes to responsibility and accountability. It doesn't work that way. We hear people like Mike the Cop talk a lot about humanizing the badge. Well, part of the problem with that is that the purpose of the badge is specifically to superhumanize. Cops get to do things that would be considered wrong if anyone else did it, such as kicking down someone's door or kidnapping someone over a plant. What gives them the special right to do this that we mere mortals don't possess? The badge. So you can't humanize the badge when the entire purpose of the badge is to superhumanize.
You are not the monster that sometimes shows up in someone's 6-second cell phone video.
So I've talked about this before in other videos. Yes, unfortunately, sometimes there are situations where a police officer's performance is captured out of context on his smartphone camera. And while it is unfortunate that sometimes this does happen, there's a very simple solution. Just have police officers wear body cameras. So that way, if a situation does arise where an officer is under scrutiny for their actions, and the bystander's cell phone recording doesn't pick up the entire context, that context is there for the officer to provide.
You are the community member, spouse, parent, child, or sibling that...
This is something that cop worshippers love to bring up. Like, cops have relatives. Like, yeah, so do literally the rest of us. Like what, someone's not supposed to be held accountable for their misconduct because they have relatives? Like, if someone has to kill a cop or anyone else in self-defense, does that kind of suck for the family members of the person who was killed? Yeah, it does. But the person who acted in self-defense isn't the one who created the situation that necessitated that. And they would also end up with disappointed family members if their assailant was successful in their attack.
Wants the same things the rest of your community wants. You want good schools.
If you want good schools, then I don't know, maybe stop enforcing the truancy laws and property taxes that are responsible for people being stuck in shitty schools.
Safe streets, clean parks.
If you want safe streets and clean parks, then maybe stop enforcing the war on drugs, which makes organized crime artificially profitable.
Decency in your dealings with your fellow community members.
If cops wanted decency with their fellow community members, then why do they go around threatening violence against their community members? When they throw on those red and blue lights, what does that mean? Does it mean, hey buddy, if you have the time, I'd like to chat for a bit? No, those red and blue lights mean, and you all know this, pull over now or bad things will happen. They'll call their other gang members, run you off the road, and put you into a cage because you wouldn't stop over an expired registration or some dumb shit like that. You can't claim that you want decency with your fellow community members and maintain your supposed right to detain, harass, and use force against people. It doesn't work like that.
You show up and you perform faithfully with integrity.
If you want to perform faithfully with integrity, then I say quit government police and join private security. I can't think of anything that would show more faith and integrity than working directly with the community you claim to serve and protect, instead of government, which is one of the biggest criminal organizations in the world.
Which is exactly why we need you.
We could let the actual points being made carry the emotion we want the audience to feel. Or when that fails, we can just resort to cheesy, sappy music. Anyways, until next time, this has been Philosophossum making stupidity play dead. Everyone take care.